Okay, people, I'm back. This week I went with Don Quixote by Cervantes. Very famous book, very big book, but it didn't need to be. Hold on, let me open my notes and then we'll get in on it. Yeah, yeah. Okay, Don Quixote de la Mancha. It's a fun name. I like to say it. I think I think you can get this one for free. I'm pretty sure it's in the public domain, right? All those super old books are. Homeboy wrote this around when the Spanish Armada got beat by Sir Francis Drake, which is why I started reading it. I don't know if you remember my other Armada video. A bunch of Spaniards in it. I'm like, I want to read some more Spaniard stuff. He's a Spaniard, so I picked it up, but it took a hot second because it's so thick that I just now got done. I didn't go nonstop, right? Once I knew I couldn't make the schedule, I stopped, picked up another one, read it in between. This sort of situation. Which is pretty much the case anytime you see a big long book, right? Odds are I'm not getting these books done in a week. I gotta go in chunks because I'm a slow reader. Okay, I was thoroughly enjoying this book. I really was. We were coming up to a 5 out of 5, people. I was gonna recommend this to anyone, to everyone. Then sort of book two happened. It's two books in here. Somewhere about halfway through is book two. Book two is trash. All right, there's no way around this. And as I was reading it, I was guessing. My guess ended up being right. But I was guessing that because I think the first one he wrote while he was in prison, I had heard that he was in prison in my Armada book. So the first one, there's speed, it's fluid, the thoughts roll. Um, there's more feeling, more heart in the first one. And then the second one, I think you could read it and you're like, is he doing this for money? Well, when I went to do the notes, it has this bit o situation on the actual author. And I think wait, is that where I saw it? Yeah, I think basically that's what happened. He could never make it work. He could never make it work, and in the end, he found this thing that hit. Don Quixote hit. And like so many authors even do now, he went to the well again. He went to the well when the well was dry. So book two is not good. Book two is actually terrible. So if you're if you're recommending for someone to read this whole thing, it's like a 2 out of 5. All right. But if you tell your friends or people read book one, then put it down. As a book expert, as a reader, as a reading expert, this is what I say. You read book one, then put it down and don't read anymore. You'll be very happy. You'll be very happy. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. I should start over. I should start over just to have no cuts. But nah, let's go on. Let's move forward. What was I saying? Book one and two, right? Book two loses all the charm. It really does. But let's talk about book one, right? Because book one is still a fatso, still a big boy, and it's very good, right? It feels very modern. It's very quick. It's quick-witted. Um, Even before it starts, we have I don't know if you've seen like Monty Python. It's got a lot of Monty Python feel to it, where they have the goofy credits at the beginning. It starts like that, where most books um, hear these poems describing King Arthur or something to start a King Arthur book. Only like one of the poets' names is Steaky Bacon. right? It's just the poems, the names, they're silly. It's just silliness leading up to describing his great exploits. It's given to you in a kind of just what is it? Discovery method, right? Where the author, the narrator, sort of talking to you, so the fourth wall gets broken. But he's talking about how he found the great works of this ingenious Don Quixote, and that the world must know what he did and how he did it. He even talks about how, like, we'll get to the end of a chapter, and he's like, and that's all I have for this. And then the next chapter starts, and it's like, well, I had more, but I couldn't read Arabic, so I had to wander this town until I found a Moor who translated it for me. And here's what he said. And then we pick up the story, this kind of silliness, right? Where we break, and then we adventure around out there before we come back. It's very fun. It's very silly. In any case, our boy Don Quixote, which in a weird way, I relate to quite a bit more than I think that I should. Right? It's concerning. Don Quixote's a fanboy. He's a hyper super fanboy. Now, if you read it too serious, it's not fun. Dude's getting blitzed in the head with rocks. He might be a little out of his mind. But when you take it all together, it's more like a Looney Tunes. It's like a cartoon. It's too fantastical to be real. This sort of situation, right? So in that sense, you start to feel the play that he's giving it, right? And he acts like a fanboy. He reads all of these books on knights errant. These are Lancelot, King Arthur. All these people were roaming around doing knightly stuff, which is help those that need help damsels in distress, be virtuous at all times, wander around, this kind of thing. Kind of like a wandering samurai, wanderer in the West. What is it? The Tales of Wells Fargo, these kind of things. So he reads all of these books and then is like in his mind, I gotta go do that. I gotta become a knight errant. And that's what he does. He just loads up his horse Rocinante, who ain't got no go juice anyway. Right? They describe him as all skinny and whatever, but the point is that his horse is not what the knight's horses were. He's not a heroic horse. He's kind of silly. Same as his master, right? So in that sense, he is a fanboy. And the part that makes it stick, the part that hits me as I'm reading it, he'll be normal. He'll talk like a normal human being, very intelligent. And then somebody mentions knights errant, and he just flips a switch. And it's sort of like if you get an anime fan or me, a Tolkien fan, like we can be normal. We can be talking about politics or sports, you know. But the moment you say something goofy about Gimli, I'm like, hold on now. That ain't canon, but it could fit this way and that way. And they never went to that city. And he was such and such and went over the what? You know? No, he fought at Helm's Deep, bro. I don't know what you're trying to talk to me about. I kind of lose my mind. Right? Fans kind of lose their mind when their situation comes up, when their subject comes up. They can't help themselves. But Skip Bayless, talking about sports, same way. And he does this all the time. They'll be having this conversation. He'll be all acting like a knight. And then they'll say something about this book sucks. And he's like, you, sir, are an idiot and don't know what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh my God. That's what I do. That's what I'm doing right now. Blabbing about books. It's very funny. And it hit me in a way I didn't think it should, right? Because I'm like, Don Quixote's an idiot, and you're relating to him, right? So, do the math. It's easy math. He picks, because every knight has to have a lady he's doing something for. He picks a lady in town and renames her in his mind Dulcinea del Toboso. And in his mind, he's more knightly because he's never met her. He doesn't know what she looks like. He's never talked to her. And yet he knows she's the most beautiful and whatever, right? So it's like Fighting for the honor of a beautiful woman. I'm like, that's easy. That's easy stuff. Yeah, could you fight for the honor of a woman you ain't never even seen, bro? Yeah, that's Don Quixote, bro. Ain't nobody roll like Don Quixote rolls. And I'm like, he's kind of right. All these other knights seen the lady. He ain't even seen her. He gonna go out into the wilderness. It's freaking ridiculous. He teams up with a man named Sancho Panza. Now in the book, they because it's the 1800s or 1700s or whatever the crap it was written a long time ago. He just writes him as an idiot, right? So if you're too woke, you'll just be offended. Don't be offended. It's not that serious, honestly. If you're thinking that hard about this book, maybe you're the idiot, right? But the way it reads, right? The way it reads, Sancho Panza is like your homeboy, right? You can feel that he has a good core. And he at some point gets like, because in his talking, Don Quixote is like, a squire, if you roll with me, you might end up owning an island or being a duke or something. And Sancho's all about that. He's like, bro, that would be really sweet. And he never lets him forget it through the whole time. Everything's about how this is getting me closer to my dukedom, right? But he doesn't come off as greedy because he sticks with Don Quixote in every fight. He takes the hits the same, sometimes more, full on. So he's loyal, and they'll have long-winded discussions about how great it will be when I get my island. You really are a good knight, and this kind of thing. But that's the sentiment you get is that Sancho Panza is like your friend. You have a crew. Your boy, your friend, the go-to person who, when you have a dumb idea, they're with you. And not to see you fail, not to laugh at you, but legit, they're like, yeah, I think you should date Susie again. She burnt all my stuff last time. I'm like, yeah, but you love her, right? It's one of these things. They don't try and dictate your life, but they're with you. And when you hit rock bottom, they're rock bottom with you. Yeah, and you can't help but like that person, right? That's Sancho Panza. He's that dumb friend who helps you do dumb stuff that you're gonna do anyway, right? Very interesting. So they both set off, and Don Quixote, the thing about it is, the madness grips him, as they say. And, we've all heard the one about the windmill, right? Where he sees a windmill in the distance, and in his mind, he sees a giant. And he's like, hold on, Sancho. This one's mine. He does this a lot, too. Because he knows all the rules. So if you insult him, he's like, hold on. Wait, you're just a peasant. I can't fight a peasant. Sancho, you got to fight him. And Sancho's like, hold on, I don't want to fight nobody. And he's like, well, you're going to have to if you're my squire. I can't fight non-knights. It's unknightly. But you can hit him over the head. So you go do that. He keeps throwing Sancho in fights. It's really funny. He sees the windmills and he thinks they're giants. And he's like, I got to go for it. Charges on, and Rocinante, who could never really run, saunters in. Sticks it. And of course the windmill is just going. And it whips him off. Defeat. Another funny thing. The optimism. The level of optimism that Don Quixote has is tremendous. Loses to the windmill, right? He just says, God didn't want me to win that fight. If in some other instance something goes weird, there's an enchanter following me. That always happens to these knights. And since I'm the best knight of the age right now, it's certain multiple. He goes, there's one, if not multiple, enchanters following me. And he uses this to explain everything. So if he sees a famous helmet and everyone else sees like a saucepan, he's like, well, clearly it's the enchanters. I mean, because any idiot would know this is a great legendary helmet, but he's making it look like a saucepan. But he doesn't let them laughing ever stop him either. right? He takes it all. He takes the laughs. He takes the beatings. He's a bit of a silly goober, but he's out there. How can you not get behind this, people? He's he's a go-getter. There's one point he there's a Basque. And I think this is some kind of area in Spain. I'm not 100% sure. I think so. In any case, there's a Basque who he like takes as kidnapping some lady. And he's like, have at you, good sir. And that guy doesn't like try and talk or dissuade him or he just pulls his sword out and is like, all right, well, we'll give it a go. But he didn't have a shield. So he reaches, I kid you not, the story says he reaches over, grabs a cushion from this lady, and is like blocking blows with a cushion and fighting Don Quixote. And I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Mid-fight, he stops the chapter, and he starts it in the next one a little late because he's like, hold on, it took me a little second to record what happened and yada, yada, yada. But then you're like, I mean, like, was Don Quixote that crazy? I'm like, yes. I mean, is he crazy or were actual conquistadors? Because this is what I thought at the time. I'm like, yeah, he's silly. But he didn't leave Spain on a wooden boat across the world into a dense jungle to fight savages or to wander around deserts or to, discover what the crap a bear is and then run home. He didn't do all these crazy things. Conquistadors were kind of crazy. They'd roll into a jungle, clear out a little space, set up a monastery, start teaching these savages Jesus. It's kind of nuts. Conquistadors were kind of nuts. So I think that's sort of the joke he was playing. Who's more crazy, right? Who's crazier? This Basque with a cushion, or conquistadors rolling around out in space, out in the ocean on wooden boats when they don't know how to stop scurvy yet? Hmm? Don't know. Hold on again. Okay. As for the beatings, right? He loses to the windmill. He beats the Basque. He then, at some point, he'll fight. He sees sheep. Thinks it's an army, and he charges in. Is that what happened? Oh, there was a few of these. One of them, okay, just so you know about Rocinante. He leaves Rocinante, and Sancho leaves his good donkey just to roam. They're in a little glade or whatever. So there's just grass to eat, no big deal. They go to sleep. Well, these guys come in the area. I think they say muleteers. Could be wrong about that. Anyway, a bunch of dudes. Same idea. Let me let my sort of horses wander. Well, Rocinante sees a lady horse and, wants to go flirt. So he rolls over there, and they say like the horse kicks Rocinante in the chest or something. He falls out. And then Don Quixote is like, this is inappropriate. And so he goes to like avenge the honor of Rocinante. They beat the crap out of him with sticks. I think at some point they were stomping on his chest. They do this a lot, where people stomp on your chest. It's very funny. Because, again, you got to take it as ridiculous, not as serious. Don't be too serious reading this book, or you're not going to have fun. They beat the crap out of him and Sancho. And Sancho's just sitting there complaining, like, when am I going to get my island? I don't have enough ribs left to claim my island if we don't get it soon. Right? This kind of thing. He blames every loss on the enchanters. So they make it to a hotel where he's all beat up. He's going to get healed. He says in his mind, he says to Sancho, I know an elixir that just cure me of all of this. Even if I'm cut in half, if I make this elixir that I know, you just put the two halves together and let me drink. Be right as rain, no problem. And Sancho's like, bro, I need some of that because my ribs hurt. At some point, he makes this elixir. He drinks it. Somehow, he just downs it and just falls asleep. But Sancho drinks it, and he's just like half puking his guts out. Some mess like this. It is hilarious. No, I think Don Quixote drinks a jack ton, instantly vomits, gets a little bit of a fever, but then feels better. One of these situations. But Sancho doesn't drink enough to make himself vomit, so he just feels sick as crap. I think it's one of these situations. Ridiculous. In any case, at some point, they stay at this inn. They stay at a lot of inns. He stays at an inn, and so it's him sort of beat up on a bed, Sancho on the ground, and another guy, because it's a hotel. And that guy is going to get with one of the maidens in the inn, a helper, at night. So she's going to sneak in. So she sneaks in, gets the wrong bed, is Don Quixote. Confusion abounds. Next thing you know, it's because of complete darkness. The girl's beating on Don Quixote. The muleteer starts beating on Sancho. Sancho starts flailing his arms, hitting anyone he can find. So it's like a three-way, four-way fight in the dark with no one knowing what the crap's happening. Yells all around. The hotel the owner's gonna come. The girl gets out of there. Don Quixote's pretty sure it was a giant or the enchanters or something. Sancho doesn't know what the crap's happening. And then the muleteer backs up, acts like he's asleep because he don't want to get in trouble either. And the way it comes, it's quick, right? Like I said, there's a fluidity. There's the charm of these characters. And so with all those elements, it molds into you real quick. You remember it. And it's funny. It's genuinely funny. Again, book 1, don't bother with book 2. At some point, we cut away from Don Quixote to his house. A priest and a barber are visiting his house when he's not there. And the house ladies, the staff, are like, look, these stupid books have made my master go crazy. Can you get him out of here? And the priest is like, yes, that's a great idea. It's a great idea. But first, what is this book? So apparently, Don Quixote has a massive library, and rather than just burn them all, the priest and the barber start running through some of them. And he's like, again, kind of like me, which is concerning. He'll look at a book and he'll be like, who wrote those? Oh, those are all trash. You can throw them out the window. I'll burn them. Just flat out. They're all garbage. What about this one? Hold on. This one's a quality work. Be a shame if it got burnt. So I save it. This one's great, but the author got the ending wrong. But it's good enough for the first half. Save it. This one's good, but the second one sucks, so burn the second one. And the third one, might as well while we're at it. He does this, right? He's critiquing all of these. Again, a lot like I do. A very pretentious priest. And I'm like, oh no. I am relating too well right now to these characters. This is concerning. But that's what they just go and they're picking through his library. They burn a good chunk of them. They save a good chunk. They have arguments about which one's which. Till it starts getting late and they start getting hungry. So then he just tells them, you know what, brick it up. And if he comes back, we'll tell him an enchanter did it. Which is what they do. So that he won't go back in his library. And that's another funny thing. Another reason I relate. I don't know if y'all had this, but when I was in school, the teachers would always get mad at me for reading in class. Right? And so I'm like, here's Don Quixote, same as your boy, who everyone's just trying to make him stop reading. Well, what's this about? Why don't people let us read? So at one point they go in the, what do they call it? This is where it gets crazy. The Sierra Morena, the wilderness, and they hear of some guy, some crazy guy, and Don Quixote wants to talk to him. Every time he's like, "This is an adventure. I'm gonna go right for it." So the guy comes out and he's all haggard, but he's acting like a gentleman. And he's like, "I have these two phases to me. One's crazed and I can't help it, and the other one's me." And they're trying to get his story. And he goes, "Okay, I'll tell my story, but it's so painful I cannot be interrupted. If you interrupt me, it's just." And Don Quixote's like, "Don't worry, we're not going to interrupt you. Not a word. This is a lie." So he starts telling about a story about a girl that he loves, a beautiful girl named Doro- Dorothy? Dorothea? I think Dorothea sounds better. I have no idea. Wait, no, it's Lucinda. I got it wrong. He's telling a story about Lucinda. And in describing Lucinda, he says she's a fan of knights errant. Sets Don Quixote off. He instantly interrupts. He's like, "Bro, that's all you had to say. You didn't have to tell me all this about her beauty and anything like this or that. Just knowing she's a fan of these books tells me everything I need to know." And I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, I'm exactly. Maybe I haven't said it like this all the time, but in my head I feel it. Where somebody's like, "Yeah, my boy likes Lord of the Rings." I'm like, "That's all you needed to say?" I know he's a good person. He must be. He loves Lord of the Rings. The guy goes crazy. It instantly beats up Don Quixote and Sancho. Literally describes him as like stomping on his chest before he runs back into the wilderness. Hilarious. So Don Quixote then is like he's going to talk to the guy again because he wants to finish this story. But in the course, wandering now, searching for him in the wilderness, he's like, "You know what? This guy's out here in the wilderness being a madman for the woman he loves, but he's like one-upping me. What do I do?" So he decides he's going to do the same thing. Only he is more knightly, more heroic than the guy because he's not actually out of his mind with grief. You see? She left him, so he's gone mad with grief. But his lady, what did I say her? Dulcina, Don Quixote's lady hasn't. So his acts of madness are superior to the other guys because they're not mad. If that makes sense, that's his thinking. That's his thinking. So he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna write a letter. You take it to her, Sancho, and I'll be out here doing mad, crazy things, and then she'll come back with my response, and then we can move on." And Sancho's like, "It's a great idea." And then Don Quixote's like, "Okay, but first, let me pull my pants down and do some backflips." And Sancho's like, "Hold on. Can you not pull your pants down? Isn't it enough that I know you're going to do it?" And Don Quixote's like, "I don't think it is enough. It doesn't feel right if you don't see me with my pants down." So he pulls his pants down and does a bunch of backflips. And Sancho's like, "Got it!" And he leaves, but he didn't leave with the letter. And he doesn't know what the lady looks like. So I don't know what he's going to do. He doesn't get very far when he meets the barber and the priest, the same ones who were messing with the books. They're out here trying to find Don Quixote, get him back home. They talk, they start heading back. Along the way, they meet our Cardinia. That's the dude's name. And they get the full of the story. And the full story, and we get into the weeds about it. It's kind of hilarious because it's so dramatic. So Cardinia met the beautifulest girl ever, Lucinda, and he was going to marry her. But before he could marry her, a lord, they call them dons, wanted him to come and be his aide, to be his helper. It's a big step in the world. So he goes. And then, of course, he meets the Don's son, Don Fernando. They become sort of tight. So he's telling them all about Lucinda. The Don has another beautiful girl that he likes. And at some point, they make the fatal mistake of going back to Cardenia's hometown where Don Fernando sees his lady, Lucinda, and sort of falls in love. Then he does some conspiring, he tricks Cardenia to be away. Cardenia. I don't know how to say these names. He tricks him to be away and then swoops in and takes his girl. So when he comes back, he sees the wedding, he sees her say I do, and then bolts. And now he's stuck in the wilderness. And these three, the priest, the barber, are watching while Sancho's going to look for Don Quixote and bring him back to the priest. And they're just like, this is the worst story ever. I have to do something to help this young man. He's such a good guy. What am I going to do? They hear some noise. They go check it out thinking it's Don Quixote. It's some other sort of like farmer looking person. Only, and I kid you not, the farmer's washing their beautiful feet. Beautiful white feet, that's what they say. When the person sees them, they get up, try and run, and then fall, right? Like, and the hat comes off, and there's just this long, blonde, glowing hair. It's a lady. I'm like, oh my God, what's a lady doing out here? And they run up to her, and they're like, she's also extremely, ridiculously beautiful. And they're like, ma'am, please don't run. None of us here are going to hurt you whatsoever. Tell us your story. How did you end up here? What can we do to help? And so she starts a story. And she's just the bestest daughter you could have. She's running her dad's farm. She's never given anyone a reason for anything. And then in comes one Don Fernando. Plot twist. And he steals her heart, right? All these love words and this and that. And at some point he's like, I'll marry you if I could just kiss you and all this and that, right? So he says all what he needs to say to get what he wants. Then he eats it out of there. He YOLOs. And she doesn't know what to do. So at some point she tries to follow him after about a month. Because she's now in love. She can't help it. And she hears about him in this other village. And then she hears about this marriage, right? This situation with this other lady. And so rather than get caught and embarrassed and sit back home, an embarrassment because she's been used by this Don Fernando, she decided to get a bunch of gold and run off into the woods with some young man who wants to help her. Once they get into the woods, he loses his mind because of her beauty and tries to get after her. She fights him. Well, they say she kicks him off a cliff. I kid you not. And I'm like, dang it. I don't know if Homeboy deserved it. He was rapey, so I guess whatever. She kicks him off a cliff. And then she meets up with these goat herders, and the beauty just starts affecting them too. But this time she doesn't have a cliff to kick them off of. Her words, so she just YOLOs out into the woods, and that's where they find her. Hold on, I'm trying to remember how this goes now. Ah! Oh, right. So they all pair up, and they're like, "We're gonna help you. We gotta help our boy Don Quixote first." So she pretends to be a princess to get him to agree to go with her to help until such time as she releases him. So Don Quixote's agreeing to that, and they're all heading back to town. And before they get to the inn, they meet a, I think this like crying lady and a guy. Hold on. Maybe I should check this. Maybe I'll check it. All right, I had to look it up just to be sure because the same thing. That's why I got confused. They're at the hotel, and a troop of people are coming. So our Dorothea and Cardinia hide. And in walks this troop of mysterious people, and none of them want to talk. But the lady seems sad. And then it turns out, plot twist, that this is Don Fernando taking the lady, Lucinda, to a monastery because what she says happens is she had fainted, and then she had a note that says that she actually loves this other guy and that she's rather going to kill herself when she wakes up. And there's all this to do. And Don Fernando's a little bit ashamed, and so they're all heading out to this monastery just to end it, so to speak. And then out pops Dorothea at Don Fernando's legs, and she starts pleading with him. And these other two, the Lucinda and Cardinia, re-meet each other, and now they're back together. We don't know what Don Fernando's going to do. He's going to fight everyone. He's going to let it happen. But eventually, his heart gets swayed to Dorothea, and now we have two happy couples, right? I believe in this same hotel room, once they're sort of settled, or maybe it's a little before. Once they're settled, yeah, once they're settled, they end up bringing, because Don Quixote is up asleep, they bring in a book and they start reading it out to the group about some other love story that's made up. And then we get into detail on it. Where a guy and his buddy, they're best friends for their whole life. Then the guy grows up and marries a beautiful lady, and everything's fine. But his friend doesn't visit enough, so he convinces him to visit more. And then to add to this, to make sure he really feels at home, he's like, you got to try and trick her into loving you so that I know that she loves me despite of anything. And the guy's like, that's stupid. But he hounds him, so he eventually agrees to do it. And at first he's not trying, he's just trying to placate the guy. And the guy's like, you're trying to placate me, don't do it, actually try. Enough times given, he actually falls in love with the lady, and she falls in love with him. But now they don't want to get caught. So they're doing it behind this guy's back. Then one of the maids, who knows the secret, starts sneaking her guy into the house. Because the ladies cheats, I can cheat. And then that almost breaks everything down. They set up the main husband, who hides in like a cellar. And she pretends to try and like attack his friend with a knife. And so now he thinks, oh, she's for real. He doesn't question it anymore. They continue on with the affair behind his back until one day the dumb maid girl brings her guy in. He gets caught. They spill the beans. Right? So the husband runs off and dies of grief because he was so stupid to ruin his own marriage this dumb way. The lady goes to a monastery, and the guy runs off to join a war because he's sad but dies in the war. And that's how that book ends. Then we cut back to our book. And in our book, more people come to the hotel. And these people start telling their story. It's another beautiful lady who runs off with the other lady. She's like a Moor who doesn't speak much Spanish anyway, so they can't really talk to her. But the ladies can have fun over there. The guys start telling their stories, and they're like, my dad gave me and my two brothers, so the three of us, equal portions and said you can choose words or actions. My brothers chose what they chose. I chose to go and to be a soldier. He's successful in wars until one day he's captured. He's made a slave on a boat, which happened back in those days if you were in war. If you were an officer or a good soldier and you got captured, they give you the option of fighting for the other side. And you were like, okay, I'll fight for your side as long as I don't have to fight against my country. And they're like, fine. So you could end up, real life, being like a Swedish soldier captured in Russia and then living there for like 15 years. Actual. More, it happened with officers too. With officers, they'd be like, can I go back home? I gotta talk to my grandma. Like, fine, as long as you promise to come back. They'd go and come back, technically captured until they're released. So that's not outrageous. In any case, he doesn't get caught by Europeans. He gets caught by the Turks or some Moors or some Arabs of some kind. So he's just having to row their boats as a slave. And that's what he's living as a slave. He doesn't think he's going to get out. And at some point, there's a hand, a beautiful hand, obviously, who's waving him and his boys over. And she picks one of them to give a note to. And it's like, hello, I'm this Moorish girl in this tower, but I'm a Christian. I want to go to a Christian land. Can you help me? She gives him money. Gives him a lot of money. So much so that they buy their freedom, buy a boat, and start planning the escape. They escape with her. They, make their way, almost get captured by some French people, get released, make it to Spain. So they're walking now to some monastery or somewhere where hopefully she can get baptized and that he can marry her then, because now they're in love. Right? And everybody's like, that's a crazy story. I hope she does get baptized. She seems so nice. It's a good thing she's not a Moor anymore. Dirty Muslims. Kind of situation, right? And then as he's finishing his story, another guy walks in with another beautiful girl. This time it's a girl, his daughter. And one of the guys sort of moves off to the side because he recognizes the guy as his brother. And he wants to know how he's going to break the news to him. And the priest helps out. They spill the beans, and there's now a long lost reunion. Dad's sick, but he wants to see you again. Our brother's in Mexico, getting rich. I'm going to go help him. I'm doing well. Sure, I'll help you out. This is all going to be great. They meet the Moorish lady who's all pleasant, and he's happy for his brother that now he's going to be married, and we all have this money, and everything's going great. All right, so the night is over. Let's go to sleep. And it's a good chunk you've been reading, so it does feel like a long night. Outside, somebody's singing. The ladies go to listen. They wake the girl up, who just came with the last guy, and she's distraught because she knows who it is. Some boy loves her, and he must have snuck in as one of the pages, and he's following her. Don't know what's going to happen, but she's distraught because she's young and in love, and the lady's like, don't worry, we'll handle this. And so the next morning they try and fix it, right? They're trying to tell everyone what's going on. Turns out he's not just a boy, he's the boy of a lord, which they call dons. He's the boy of a don, and his dad has sent dudes out to bring him back, and they're not going back without him. So there's a big kerfuffle. Everyone's starting to fight. Don Quixote actually brings order to the situation, calms everyone down. They start talking it through. And so the guy's like, because the brother of the captured guy who's going to marry the Moor is the father of the girl now. And he's like, okay, but we can't do this here. I have to talk to your dad. I have just enough time before my boat leaves. We're all going to make it work. So now we have like 3 love stories and a 4th one from a book, all in some condensed package. We have people fighting each other, all this kind of madness. And then I was thinking, as they were fighting, that to me it works because they're Spaniards. And there's a Latin culture, there's a British culture, there's a Russian culture, right? And each have their elements. If the same story were British, it wouldn't work because they wouldn't fight like that, right? British dudes fighting, it's way more serious. They're going to have a duel or something, right? But they sort of never get to that point. A lot of politics in sort of Britain from what I see. America, which we're British, but then we went to America, we'll finish the duel. We'll have a full-on duel. Russians have these uprisings and then torture their enemies. It's very vicious. Germans sort of get up in arms about stuff and then get real close to fighting, and then sometimes don't, but then sometimes do. Right? So when you because they fought just in the courtyard, and then they sort of stopped and they were okay. They were pulling knives. They were trying to really swing on each other. And I feel like that may be more of a Latin thing, where you just get impassioned, you get angry, there's some scuffling, but people don't end up hating people don't end up hating each other for years, right? Dudes can fight. Spanish dudes can fight each other, and they're like, all right, let it go. And it just hit me in that moment that they can do that. They all split up, but they all asked the priest to send them letters because they want to know what's going to happen with Don Quixote and his crazy story. They take Don Quixote back home. He thinks enchanters have blocked up his wall. And then we sort of end it there. Right? Don Quixote seems rational, but he's still certain he's a knight errant. I'm not going to let it go. And that's what I'd say don't read anymore. You get that last run of it. It's very energetic, like I said, full of charm. You get to like these. I'll remember these characters from a long time from now. I might have to look up the order of who came into the hotel first, but you get a good sense of who they are. Book 2, nothing of interest happens in Book 2. I think at some point he's trapped by a duke, and that it just doesn't feel right. It feels like they're making fun of him. It's not fun. He challenges a lion, and the lion just goes back to sleep. But the fact that he challenged the lion is very Don Quixote. It's the funnest part of Book 2, but it's not worth it. Right? Goes in sort of a cave. It's really not good. You can really feel that he just forced it. So, I think I'm about done. That's sort of what happens. There's less Don Quixote adventures than you think. They're all silly. Then he makes silliness up with love story on top of love story. And then they just hit one after the other. And you sort of just roll with it for some reason. I don't know why. It fit the story somehow. And I just rolled with it. I read like 9 love stories in one. Then got Don Quixote back home. And Sancho got sort of a bunch of gold and a donkey. So he was happy. Everyone ends up happy. The energy. The characters start not talking like themselves. The banter is more sedated in Book 2. It's like he couldn't get whimsical again. He's too rational in Book 2. If that makes sense. Right? I think that's what it is. He's too rational for an irrational story. And he loses all his sayings, right? Interspersed in that Book 1 are a lot of great sort of little nuggets of information. At one point, what does he say? He's like, women are more quick-witted. They're smarter in almost every situation except making a coherent argument. He says that in the book. It's not me. Don't get mad at me. It's also kind of true. Right? So he's quick. He's witty. It's funny. There's energy. There's flow. All of this is gone in Book 2. So there it is. Don Quixote. Now again, I would recommend Book 1. You can recommend it to anyone. I think even if you don't read a lot of books, you'd feel good about reading that first book. Because it's just so silly, so ridiculous. But don't recommend anyone read Book 2. It's a waste of time. Alright. Ad time. I don't know how long this one is. It felt short. But, I could only talk about the one book. Right? So what can I do? That's what happens. Buy my books. All of my books are better than Book 2 of Don Quixote. Trust, believe it. There's no soul. It's not It's not fun at all. Really wish authors would stop doing that, just making stuff for the cheddar. I get why, do what you got to do, but it doesn't help the cause, right? Tolkien, just 3 books, 4 books. You don't need extra. They're so great as they are. They'll keep selling. Don't worry about it. Just work on your story, bro. All right, people. Thank you for listening. I don't know what I'm going to do next week, but it'll be another book. At some point, I might do audiobooks because I have a bunch of those, but I need more time to actually listen. I need to re-listen to some to see how I'm absorbing them, if that makes sense. In any case, I'm out. I'll talk to you all next week.